It's a great day. My name is Che Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur, and welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show, the number one business development and revenue focused late night show in the country where we are on a mission. And our mission really is to empower. Our mission really is to inspire, and our mission is to provide you, that's right, you, the hard-working entrepreneur, with all of the resources that are necessary to execute that big vision you have for the people you would call to serve. On this episode, we have the one and only Sarah, or Zehra, as in Sarah, who's in the building, and she'll be talking about really how you can have a healthy lifestyle even as a business professional. This whole fitness thing should be interesting. What's going on, Sarah? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Shay. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sarah, thanks for being here. Now, this is a question. It's got to be let's just address the elephant in the room, okay? And people are going to read your bio. They'll see how famous you are. Some people are already Googling you and checking you out. But the number one question got to be on people's mind is, why are people struggling these days to find time to do fitness and take care of themselves when they know it's the most important part of thing they can do in their life? Now, I know it's a big loaded question, but I'm curious what your view of the world is.
Yeah, so I think that people actually might not realize that it is the most important thing that they need to be doing. I think in today's society, there is a big drive with, success being wealth, money, achievements, right, in our careers, in our entrepreneurial lives, or for people who aren't even entrepreneurs, right, people in their careers. And I think that we need to really redefine wealth. Health is wealth. And there is no point of, trying to keep on this go, go, go path if we're not taking some time to prioritize ourselves. So I think the real problem is people focusing on the wrong things.
You said focus on the wrong thing. I think I love that, by the way. And for those folks that saying, Shay, can you please let Zehra know up front that I work a full-time job? And the question is going to be, what do you say to busy people out there? Somebody's saying, wait a minute, I'm also a full-time entrepreneur. So I'm a dualpreneur. And that's a lot of our audience that work full-time jobs. They're full-time entrepreneurs. Someone said, wait a minute, can you let her know I'm a wife or I'm a husband? Someone else saying, wait, let her know as well, I've got kids and my kids have a schedule. Someone else wants you to know, just so you know what they're thinking right now. They're like, wait a minute. Shay, can you let them know I'm also a caregiver? Like, no, I take care of other people. Someone said, I'm involved in my community. Someone said, I'm all of those and then some more. So what do you say to the person that's got so much going on? People are dependent on them. How do they take care of themselves without feeling guilty? Again, a loaded question, but what would you say to that person?
I would say think back to, when you're on a plane and they always say, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. I think that it is so admirable, people who are always, putting other people first, and they're a caregiver, they have kids, or they, are taking care of relatives and have to provide for their family. I think I really do admire that so much. I think that where I like to step in is to help people realize that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to be obsessed, quote unquote, with fitness and health and not incorporating it. You can still incorporate it in those small ways, small little ways. We can stand instead of sitting for short periods of time. I know at the end of the day that we are all want to just crash on the couch, want to crash in bed, just taking those extra 5 minutes to get a couple of extra steps in, to, have your kids in there with you if you can, make it a fun family activity if you can, moving around. That's a lot of things that I help my clients with, is how can we incorporate the kiddos into that, when it's your time to play with them or to hang out with them. And I think just not looking at it with that all or nothing mentality is really the game changer for most of the busy professionals that I work with.
I love that. Well said, by the way. Before we get into your background, folks want to know your backstory and so forth. But some folks are saying, wait a minute. And I'm thinking too, MindFuel Fitness, Shay. Before we know who Zara is, like Sarah, but Zehra, who Zehra is, what's the backstory between MindFuel Fitness? How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, so my sort of fitness background is very rooted in mindfulness, whether that be with fitness, with nutrition, with accountability, any of that stuff. So I developed the calm method, which is it stands for confidence, accountability, lifestyle, and mindset. And that is really what my coaching is rooted in. And because those are really the elements that I noticed in my own journey I was struggling with the most. So putting that all together, I noticed a very common theme is mindfulness, right? So being confidence has a lot to do with being mindful of the choices that we make to move ourselves forward. Accountability has a lot to do with being mindful of holding ourselves accountable to getting these things done, or having another person or another system of accountability to be mindful to find ways to get what we need to get into our day. Lifestyle as well. I think that it is a common misconception that if you are fit or in the fitness world, that you are waking up at 5 a.m., you are not drinking anymore, you are not doing anything fun that you used to like to do. But that's not the case, right? It is about making these mindful choices. If you are planning to maybe go have some drinks that night, then making sure you're fueling up with protein ahead of time, making sure you have a plan, right, for what you want to eat afterwards. If you are a very busy parent and you know that you have a really, really jam-packed day the next day, having just those easy to go snacks at your desk or in your purse or in your car for those on the go days, right? Having those, setting your lifestyle up for success, I think all comes down to being mindful and making those choices. And then, of course, lastly, mindset goes without saying that that has everything to do with mindfulness. And like I mentioned earlier, breaking through that all or nothing mindset to be successful.
So you gave us a little touch about who you are as well, by the way. You gave us a little touch of the backstory. But was there ever a time that you, along this journey, struggle with being consistent? And I say that because, I'm someone that's probably fortunate like yourself, they're able to get the workouts in and get the running in, but there's still times I feel like I'm not as consistent as I need to be. And, you may have heard this phrase before, that consistency is the key. Consistency is the key. Well, consistency is the key. And having said that, what do most people struggle with? They struggle with consistency. I got two hands up, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm not saying you're alone. Your thoughts. What do you share with someone who's always, dibbling and dabbling, but having a hard time being consistent?
I would say that what they're kind of like dabbing in is probably not the best maybe system or routine for them, right? Maybe they need to figure out smaller ways. Maybe they need to figure out shorter workouts, or maybe they need to figure out having more convenient things in their house, right? So that something common that I note is that people, when they are really, really busy, meetings, in between those times, they're like, all right, I'm hungry. I'm just going to grab whatever I can find. That is the most common thing that I find. So keeping things that are of easy and convenient. I'm a big fan of things like microwaved vegetables, just having them in the freezer to quickly add a scoop to your meal, right? Having small protein packed snacks. I am like obsessed with these little edamame protein packed snacks. We got anything that's kind of ready made and just to have can really help you with consistency with your protein and macros and all of that good stuff. And then in terms of, workouts, I think that there's also a misconception that fitness is, maybe 80% exercise, 20% nutrition, but it really is the opposite. It's 80% nutrition, 20% movement. So yes, it is important to get movement in. It's important for cardiovascular health. It's important for longevity, building muscle mass, and all of that good stuff. But I think that it really comes down to just being really mindful of having these high quality things in your house so that you're not in those moments of, oh my God, I don't know what to do, falling off, and then being like, okay, well, I fell off on my breakfast, so I'm just gonna start again tomorrow. Just knowing that you can get back on the horse that same day. It's okay to mess up. You can get back on the horse and still be successful for the rest of the day, the rest of the week. There doesn't need to be this fresh start every single time you mess up or go slightly off track.
What I'm not hearing, which I like, is I'm not hearing that you're beating yourself up, because sometimes I beat myself. I'm like, oh, why did I go? I'm so crazy. I needed to be there. And I end up beating myself up. And maybe some of you out there found yourself that you're eating a slice of pizza. I'm probably the only one, maybe a little tub of ice cream. I'm sure I'm the only one. you talk about mindfulness, which I love, by the way. But I haven't read anywhere yet when you beat yourself up, you do a better job, right? In all my reading and all my studies, no one said beat yourself up and you do a better job. Are there affirmations? Are there affirmations that you tell yourself in order to keep going and stay encouraged?
I think affirmations can be really powerful. I think that what I like to tell myself is that I'm doing my best. And I think that as you start to develop that more trust in yourself, it's very empowering because you are no longer waiting and depending on this external validation of like, okay, I did this check, I did this check, I did this check. Now I can feel good about myself. And, I've been in the fitness space for about seven or so years now as a coach and a trainer. And I started as a personal trainer, and I honestly wasn't sure, where the gig was going to take me. But what I do know is that experience is really what made me absolutely fall in love with being a part of people's fitness journeys because of all of these difficulties and challenges that we're talking about. So, seeing their progress not only on the outside, but seeing them go from totally burnt out and just feeling really down on themselves to watching them really take control of their lives is really what I fell in love with, because that was very similar to my experience. You know, I think that it's important. I had a client actually once, come to me going through a really rough divorce, working for a startup, working 80 plus hours per week, exhausted, right? And barely going out. And after a few months of working together, he was just feeling so good about himself. He had like 4 to 5 dates lined up a week. I'm like, oh my goodness, like what is happening? It was just really amazing to see how just prioritizing your fitness and wellness in small ways, right? He was only dedicating a few hours a week. It was about 2 hours a week, just dedicating to getting some movement in and thinking about on Sunday nights, just thinking about what he was going to eat for the rest of the week. And that had really life changing effects on all aspects of his life. So that's really what drove me to it. And then I also understand because I have a very demanding schedule. Fitness coaching isn't all I do. I also do have a full time, I also do part time coaching. So I can really relate to people struggling to find that balance in their lifestyle. And that's where my calm method comes in. It's developing that relationship with my clients for them to really start at the foundation of I'm doing okay. And there's only, room to grow from here, and not beating ourselves up, I think is so, so important. So thanks for bringing that up, Shay.
Thanks. Some people I don't get a chance to meet in person. I got a chance to meet you a couple of weeks ago, depending on when they're watching this in Raleigh, North Carolina. And you really have a heart to give and a heart to serve. Where does this passion come from? And you can hear you when you're talking. You get more and more excited as you talk about it, by the way. But where does this deep-seated passion come from of serving and helping others? Is that something that you learned from somebody? Is that something that's just inside of you? Where does it come from?
I think, I think about this a lot because from a very young age, I knew that helping people was my passion. And I wasn't exactly sure what to do with that. I was like, I know that when people talk to me, I like to make them feel better. I like to help them out, but I just didn't really know where to take that. But, I myself was never the most confident person growing up. I was born with eczema, so I had scars all over my body. And, people can be mean. So, especially as a woman, our skin is constantly judged. And it definitely affected how I saw myself. So, as minor as that may seem, I realized that later in life that experience really had compounding effects. Even as the scars faded when I got older, it just led me into this really unhealthy mindset of searching for my confidence and self-worth externally, as I alluded to earlier, whether that was constantly working towards my next achievement or seeking validation from people. So, long story short, I just decided that when I committed to my health and fitness, I saw so much change in not only my physique, but in my mood and my interactions with people, my productivity at work. And so, there was just a moment where I told myself that, okay, I have seen how powerful this can be for me. This is how I'm going to help people. And, I ran with that. I started my personal training journey, my online coaching journey, and really the rest is history. So I think it really stemmed from figuring out my own journey and reflecting on my challenges to figure out how I can best help other people, since that's always been my passion.
I love it, but you owned it, and that's it's a perfect segue as you were sharing it with you, so transparent, so open, to a segue we have here called "Today is my January 1st." Ladies, y'all might think her life is perfect. Maybe her life is perfect. I don't know. We're going to find out. But for those folks who tune in every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you know what we're about to do. You can go ahead and say those magical words. Today is my January 1st. Doesn't that feel good? Happy New Year to you, by the way. And for all the new folks, welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur family. We're glad you're here. Thank you for allowing us to stream into your home, by the way, or however you're watching this or listening to this. We appreciate you. Today is my January 1st is our personal mantra here. It represents a fresh start. It represents a do-over. It means our past, no matter how dark and gloomy and past that is, or how bright and sunny the past is, the past really no longer equals the future. And so my question for Zahra on the other side, like Zehra on the other side, I love that. But when you hear those words, today is my January 1st, what do you hear? And number two, what was another time you had a setback and there's a challenge in your life, and how were you able to bounce back from it?
Yeah, so firstly, I'd say I hear opportunity. I hear let's have this fresh start, and it doesn't mean that everything in the past is necessarily gone, but it means that now we have this start to maybe shift our perspective on how we looked at the past events and things like that. So I think for me, my January 1st moment was probably a very specific moment, actually, when I looked in the mirror back in, I believe it was summer of 2017. It might have been June of 2017, a long time ago, but I remember the moment so vividly, and that's why it's so specific. And just to make it make sense, let me take you back to when I looked in the mirror a few months before that. I didn't like what I saw physically. My clothes weren't fitting right. I looked run down, all that stuff that people tend to see if they're not feeling super great. But what I really saw beyond that was someone who was dependent, on others, like I mentioned, to feel good about myself. And I just really felt weak, and I felt out of control. And I mentioned earlier that, growing up with a skin disease, it takes a toll because it's so out of your control that a lot of times what happens is you can feel like you don't have control in a lot of areas of your life. Something that I find very common with my clients, whether it is my client who is going through a divorce, or I've had clients who were recently laid off, or people who are trying to create a new startup and who are just really struggling, whatever your struggle is, I know that it can be really tough, and it can make you feel this loss of control over your life. So I really wanted to focus on myself and stop seeking my self-worth externally, stop grinding so hard that I was, I just completely forgot about myself. And what really happened over time is that I started getting consistent. I luckily had a very close friend who started holding me accountable, which is why it's such a big pillar in my coaching. She started holding me accountable to, prioritizing myself, whether that be sleep, getting to the gym, making better eating choices, those small things. And over time, I really started noticing the changes. And, that moment in June of 2017, when I looked in the mirror, I saw a strong and confident person for the first time ever. And that's when I decided that, I want to help other people do the same thing. And I really haven't looked back since. So that, I would say, similarly to earlier, but that really was my January 1st moment.
Wow. Spot on, by the way. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being so authentic. And, as you're speaking, the thoughts of some folks that have to be at the gym, like myself personally, I like to be in there because I can just see it and I feel the vibes. I hear the music, and for me, it works. But take a moment and talk about the person that you said has that busy schedule and their gym isn't open 24 hours. They don't have access to it. The difference, if there is one, mentally, and maybe even when you're working out, between doing it online, which I have done before and I love it. My wife loves getting on the Peloton upstairs and doing some other cool stuff. versus going to the gym? Is there a difference, and do both still at least get the movement and activity you need? Again, just want to get your perspective.
Yes, I think that there is flexibility there. Some people just don't have the time to get to a gym, and I think that the there is still ways to have resistance training through body weight. You can also, we're lucky that we can order pretty much anything off like Amazon or wherever. We can order weights, we can get resistance bands, we can get creative. So for folks who are prefer to train at home, that is definitely something that I can accommodate. I do, I have clients right now who are tax accountants. So this is like busy, busy season for them. And we were training in the gym. And then she, mentioned like, I either have to stop or unless we can shift to at home workout. So of course, something's better than nothing, right? So still having that at home is a great, great option, especially for if you just need to get a quick 20-minute movement in. It is still better than nothing to get that body moving. I will say though, in my coaching and a lot of fitness coaches, what we'll do is kind of set up their coaching program so that they can do it at the gym. So it is set up all, online so that they can follow it. They have the video models, they have the exact guidelines of what to do, but they're still able to go to the gym. So I think having that flexibility and that option is great for people who are still able to go, but then people who aren't, being able to customize the fitness and training programs to their specific goals and still being able to achieve them at home is still, like I said, better than nothing and can absolutely help people work towards their goals.
Wow, God, I love it. By the way, that's really good. And the health. They say your health is your wealth. I get that part. But if you had to step back, and it's one of the favorite questions I get to ask whenever I have time, and say, what's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever been given? And I'll frame it for the audience so they're clear that we're not looking for her to come off the mountain with the 10 Commandments, by the way. She's had a lot of mentors along this journey of life. She's read so many books along this journey of life. It's kind of almost an unfair question, but I am curious, if she had to answer it, what's one of the best pieces of advice you've been given about life, and how has that helped you?
I think, I've gotten a lot, like you said, a lot of mentors, a lot of reading, a lot of things like that. I think the most important advice I've gotten is to be authentic to who I am. And I think what really helped me in that sense is that, my coaching is very driven through empathy, through open communication, through genuine connection. And I always felt that, maybe as an empath, I would be seen as a weaker coach or maybe not as effective, because I know a lot of people think coaching trainers, they're kind of like drill sergeants. So I always felt inferior when I first started out. And I think that I had somebody tell me that no, that is your superpower, that you're able to feel so deeply for other people, that you are so committed to their journey with them. And that has, helped me grow leaps and bounds in my own journey, but also in helping, in my business journey, helping people. So I would say to anyone listening that if you feel like there's something that stands out about you that is outside of the norm, maybe in the fields that you're working in or in the space that you're in, don't view that as weakness. That actually really can be your superpower and help you stand out and find the right people who are would work well with you. So that would be probably the best advice I've gotten that I've been able to implement.
I love it, by the way. I love it. You know, what do you do for fun when you're not out saving the world and exercising and trying to do these classes and working and speaking? I saw you speaking on a platform when I met you, by the way. What do you do for fun these days?
For fun, I love sports. So like that is something that I know kind of like embeds a little bit into the fitness stuff, but I genuinely love it. And not to be competitive, not necessarily even for a workout. I just love just getting out there. I love tennis. I actually recently joined a softball league. So I am going to just be building a community there. I'm excited for that. And outside of that, honestly, like I love food. I love eating. I love going out to restaurants. I enjoy watching TV. I love just walking outdoors. If you ever were to guess where I'll be on a Sunday afternoon, it is going to probably be walking to a coffee shop and just hanging out, having some nice conversation. That's honestly my favorite things to do. Play with my little fur baby. I love her to pieces. And yeah, simple things, you know?
Well, you can't tell us about the fur baby and not tell us the fur baby's name or what type of fur baby you have. I mean, everyone's leaning in saying, Shay, don't let her get away with that, by the way. We're all curious, so please share with us.
Oh, my little fur baby's name is Lula. She's a cat, and she's the best. She keeps me active. Anytime I'm like, oh my God, I need to get a little more steps in today. I've been like sitting for way too long. I just chase her around my place, and it's amazing. So she is my little princess, and I love her.
Oh, I love it, boy. That is amazing. That is incredible. As we come down the home stretch, a two-part question. Number one, what type of clients are you looking to work with these days, if any? Because I'm not sure if your firm's taking on any clients. And number two, how can folks best connect with you? How can they stay in this conversation over and beyond today if they want to connect through a website or social media? What do you recommend people do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that a great way to connect with me is LinkedIn. You can feel free to kind of browse my content, kind of get to know me a little bit better on there. Send me a DM there. I would love to chat. Instagram also works too. And then I also do on my website, if you want to explore a little bit more on client testimonials and, just dive a little bit deeper into my background, who I am, my coaching methods, my website has all of that. And for those of you that are interested in, just booking a free consultation, jumping in and just getting to chat one-on-one, I do have an application right on my website that you can click on. The form takes like 2 to 3 minutes, and I'll be in touch with you within the day. So feel free to reach out.
Yay. So let me close by saying, number one, thank you so much for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show. I love what you're doing. I love your energy. I love your message. And one thing we all need is to be healthy. So thank you so much. Can't wait to connect with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Shay. Looking forward to it.
And thank you to viewers. Thank you for tuning in, by the way, because without you, we don't have a show. So thanks for listening and tuning in during these very remarkable, challenging times that we live in. I never get tired of reminding you every night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, no matter what's going on in your life, whether you're doing really, really well and you're trying to get to that next level, or maybe you've been hit with the punch you never saw coming. The one thing I believe is that today is your January 1st. And because of just that one reason alone, I believe your best is yet to come. Your best is yet to come. Your best is yet to come. With that being said, my name hasn't changed. It's still Che Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur. We out. Peace. Zehra like Sarah. I love it. We out of here. Peace, everyone. See you on the other side.